Well, let's begin our service. We're going to worship God through it all. I mean, we are to be in the world, but not of the world. Amen? And it's part of our job to stand up for what is right. So we do need to talk about that sometimes. Would you please stand? We'll begin with a call to worship. Break open our hearts this morning to hear your word, O God. Let our fears be vanquished, our spirits restored. Come and let us worship with great joy. Let us drop the things of the past which weigh us down. God is about to do something new in our lives. Let God's will become strong in our lives. Amen. Now let's sing hymn number 43, All Hail the Power of Jesus' Name.
To the Jews who had believed him, Jesus said,
If you hold to my teaching, you are really my disciples. Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." They answered him, "We are Abraham's descendants and have never been slaves of anyone. How can you say that we shall be set free?" Jesus replied, "I tell you the truth. Everyone who sins is a slave to sin. Now a slave has no permanent place in the family, but a son belongs to it forever. So if the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed. I know you are Abraham's descendants, yet you are ready to kill me, because you have no room for my word. I am telling you what I have seen in the Father's presence, and you do what you have heard from your father." "Abraham is our father," they answered. "If you were Abraham's children," said Jesus, "then you would do the things Abraham did. As it is, you are determined to kill me, a man who has told you the truth that I heard from God. Abraham did not do such things. You are doing the things your own father does." "We are not illegitimate children," they protested. "The only father we have is God himself." Jesus said to them, "If God were your father, you would love me, for I came from God and now am here. I have not come on my own, but he sent me. Why is my language not clear to you? Because you are unable to hear what I say. You belong to your father, the devil, and you want to carry out your father's desire. He was a murderer from the beginning, not holding to the truth, for there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks his native language, for he is a liar and the father of lies. Yet because I tell the truth, you do not believe me. Can any of you prove me guilty of sin? If I am telling the truth, why don't you believe me? He who belongs to God hears what God says. The reason you do not hear is that you do not belong to God." The Jews answered him, "Aren't we right in saying that you are a Samaritan and demon-possessed?" "I am not possessed by a demon," said Jesus, "but I honor my Father, and you dishonor me. I am not seeking glory for myself, but there is one who seeks it, and he is the judge. I tell you the truth, if anyone keeps my word, he will never see death." At this the Jews exclaimed, "Now we know that you are demon-possessed. Abraham died, and so did the prophets, yet you say that if anyone keeps your word, he will never taste death. Are you greater than our father Abraham? He died, and so did the prophets. Who do you think you are?" Jesus replied, "If I glorify myself, my glory means nothing. My Father, whom you claim as your God, is the one who glorifies me. Though you do not know him, I know him. If I said I did not, I would be a liar like you. But I do know him and keep his word. Your father Abraham rejoiced at the thought of seeing my day. He saw it and was glad." "You are not yet 50 years old," the Jews said to him, "and you have seen Abraham?" "I tell you the truth," Jesus answered. "Before Abraham was born, I am." At this they picked up stones to stone him, but Jesus hid himself, slipping away from the temple grounds. This is the word of the Lord for the people of the Lord. Thanks be to God. I did say that going to get a little bit political this morning because I think more than any time that I've lived and been able to understand things. I think we're at a point where good and evil are clearly at odds and fighting for control right now. I will say that I do support our President Trump. I think more highly of him than some people seem to. I do really think he's working hard and sacrificing a lot of things for the good of our country and to help us. He knows about many things that I'm going to talk about here, and is working to change things. But basically what I want to ask you is if you trust the media. We grow up watching TV and reading newspapers and hearing the radio and wanting to watch and listen to the news every day and understanding and believing that what they're telling us is what's going on. And it's the truth. They're our authority figures in many cases. But I want to ask some questions. Can we believe the news and the information that we read and hear every day? I think it's time to wake up, because believe it or not, this country's media outlets, TV stations, radio reports, newspapers, magazines, and more are being used against us. They have been for a long time. They're being used to divide us. That should be pretty obvious. To misinform us, to take our rights and our country right out from under us. Well, who's behind all this? We shall begin to see. It's time for us to wake up. What has been going on in our world affects us and is intertwined into everything throughout all aspects of our lives. Believe it or not. Follow the yellow brick road, right? We've been asleep for too long while they took over our world and our minds, step by step. And there's a lot of meaning in this movie, by the way. It's not just a children's tale. With their distractions, we didn't notice what they have been doing to our health, our environment, our food, education, government, media, our spirituality, our lives, and what they're doing to our children. Shh! They will never know what we have done. We toddled along thinking all was right with the world, like good people do. We want to trust. Beware of the road you travel and who you depend on. But have you ever wondered if what you've been told is the truth? Pay no attention to the man behind that curtain who's pulling the levers and acting like Oz. The Mockingbird Media is the purveyor and the deceiver. They are complicit in every evil and are deeply entrenched within every cultural mountain in our world. Behind it all, the deep state does not want you to be free. To them we are slaves, cattle, and deplorable. We found a way out, though. It's time to wake up. All we have to do is stand up, and their little game is over. But they're counting that we're not going to do that. So we need to work at deleting the Mockingbird Media, okay? Have you ever heard of Operation Mockingbird? No? Okay. How about the deep state?
Yes.
Or shadow government? Okay. The swamp,
Yes.
as Trump calls it. Well, Operation Mockingbird is the fact that the CIA and the deep state swamp have double agents in the media. Okay? So here's some questions. What is propaganda? Does our CIA, Central Intelligence Agency, engage in it? It's actually one of their primary purposes. Have you heard of Mockingbird Media? No, not really. Well, who could be behind this? How has and how does this continue to affect people in America? Propaganda. Well, injustice has come to America through socialist propaganda, just as it did with the Jewish people who were overtaken by National Socialists during World War II, the Nazis. They used great deception, lies, and propaganda built by treasonous puppet masters. And we know what happened to Germany last century. You know, many people say, well, all of these bad things that you talk about sometimes couldn't happen to us. This is America. I say, look at the last century. Every other major superpower in the world was overtaken by lies, deception, and evil. Germany, Russia, China, Japan, Italy. And we think we're better than all those people? No, we're not. It can happen to us too. Look at the Bible. It talks about how Israel turned away from God again and again and again. It only took one generation in many instances for that to happen. America has been going on quite a good ride for a while, but it's been slowly deteriorating, and we're really starting to see the results of some of that now. You know, without a free press, without honest media, which we're supposed to have, and free speech, the right to bear arms as well, and other freedoms, a country can be quickly overcome by pure evil. You know, there's a famous saying, he who controls the media controls the mind of the public. That's Noam Chomsky. For those of you who know Jim Morrison, famous rock singer, his father was in the CIA, and he said the same thing. He who controls the media controls the minds of the public. We now know because of recently released JFK files that Operation Mockingbird was a true program, and as the CIA admitted, they had over 40 double agents in the media. They admitted it. Even that was a lie, though, since we now know that they have had hundreds to thousands of double agents in the media. Former CIA Director William Colby said, "The CIA owns anyone of any significance in the major media." Former CIA Director William Casey said, "We'll know our disinformation program is complete once everything the American public believes is false." William Casey. Anderson Cooper of CNN was even an intern at the CIA. That's a picture of Anderson Cooper with his brother who committed suicide. That's his mother, Gloria Vanderbilt. And above her, above the bed there, is a depiction of satanic human sacrifice. He grew up in that. Operation Mockingbird is but one of many covert CIA operations perpetrated on the people of the Republic of the United States. In fact, most big-name commentators in the news media all get what's called 4 a.m. talking points every day. You might hear people sometimes talk about the talking points in the media. Okay, those come out most every day at 4 a.m., okay? And they get disseminated to all the different major news outlets. And a lot of them have these disposable cell phones, burner phones, and they get these messages. In other words, they use these phones to receive the propaganda, talking points that we receive as news every day. And it's easy to prove to yourself, as you can go look at the news reports that come out after 4 a.m., and you can see the exact same phrase being used in all the stories on any given topic. Okay? Go to the Washington Post, New York Times, and other print media. Then you'll hear it repeated on CNN, MSNBC, CBS, even Fox News, and local broadcasts. It's mostly propaganda from the deep state to control our minds, what we think and believe. Those up there are different examples, and you can look at the times of when they all come out. 4:46 a.m., 4:54 a.m., 4:59, 5:12. They're all shortly after 4 a.m. This one particular story is about Trump lawyer Michael Cohen, who said his family, that his family, not president, is his first loyalty. And every single one of these that went to different news agencies say the same thing. Slightly different way, but the same phrase. All right. One example was Hurricane Harvey in Houston a few years ago. Remember that one? Do you remember that Donald Trump went down to hand out food and help out after that hurricane? Well, the deep state hates Donald Trump because he's trying to drain the swamp, and they are the swamp. So when he went down there to pass out food to the victims, all the news reports the next day used the same 4 a.m. talking points, saying that Trump showed a lack of empathy. Lack of empathy, lack of empathy, lack of empathy, lack of empathy in print, TV, and radio for days. He was down there trying to help pass out food and things, and they were saying lack of empathy everywhere. All right? The thing about him is he didn't have to become president. And he was very popular. He was very popular. Nobody thought he was a racist. Everybody, not everybody, but most people liked him. He was on all the talk shows and TV. He was very popular, very rich man. He had everything he could want or need. He did not have to put himself through all this. Okay, it's one thing that I can see that does help me trust him. Now, you see, the English language is vast and complex, so when you hear the exact same phrases being parroted by many different reporters at different places, it's very obviously propaganda. We'll see another example of that in a little bit. But what's another term for propaganda? Fake news, right? And fake news is nothing new in this country. In fact, all the way back in 1880, it was an issue. New York journalist John Swinton made these remarks at a news media banquet in 1880, where he was the guest of honor. He said, "There is not one of you who dares to write your honest opinions. And if you did, you know beforehand that it would never appear in print. I'm paid weekly for keeping my honest opinion out of the paper that I'm connected with. Others of you are paid similar salaries for similar things. And any of you who would be so foolish as to write honest opinions would be out on the streets looking for another job. If I allowed my honest opinions to appear in one of my papers before 24 hours, my occupation would be gone. The business of the journalist is to destroy the truth, to lie outright, to pervert, to vilify, to fawn at the feet of mammon, and to sell his country and his race for his daily bread. You know it, and I know it. And what folly is this, toasting an independent press? We are the tools and vassals of rich men behind the scenes. We are the jumping jacks. They pull the strings and we dance. Our talents, our possibilities, our lives are all property of other men. We are intellectual prostitutes. He said that at a big press meeting in New York in 1880. This is a book that talks a lot about it, the killing of Uncle Sam, the demise of the United States of America, by Rodney Howard Brown and Paul L. Williams. If you want to hear more about this, you could read that. I've got another really good history book called Uninhabited, too, which I could show you if you like sometime. But it goes on to talk about fake news all throughout history. In the 1890s, evolutionism started being used. And I've talked about that before. If you remember, a couple of years ago, I did a presentation called Kidnapping Our Country's Christian Heritage. That was done through the media and Darwinism and all of that. So that's partly what this is talking about here. The Rhodes Scholars Program has been a tool to give people power and influence. Bill Clinton was a Rhodes Scholar, and many others. Fake news was very instrumental in starting and prolonging World War I, which upsets me. My grandfather lied about his age to go join the army and go fight in Germany when he was 17. And basically it was mostly caused by staged terrorism, false flag event, they call it. An incident had to be created to provoke the American people to get into the war. We didn't want to abandon our stance of isolationism. And it came on May 7th, 1915, when a German sub sank the Lusitania. And there were other stories about babies and nuns being hurt, but Americans were not told that this Lusitania was transporting 6 million rounds of ammunition to Britain, and that the manifest was hidden under orders of President Wilson. And the Lusitania apparently was also instructed to go at a very slow speed without escort, and they were sitting ducks. It was basically set up. It says here, the cabal planted fake news about Germany in the mainstream media, including the New York Times and others, about German soldiers mutilating Belgian babies, cutting off their hands and eating them, and cutting up nuns and things that just enraged the people to go fight them, and it was mostly not true. Cabal. What is cabal? Well, cabal means a small group of people who secretly work together to get power for themselves. Think of the Illuminati. You've heard that. All right. There's some more information about that here, though. Fake news was involved in World War II in many ways as well, with the Nazis and FDR, and basically FDR, Stalin, and Hitler worked together more than we're led to understand. Not that they were friends by any means, but basically an incident had to be staged that was even worse than the sinking of the Lusitania. Have you ever heard of the Council on Foreign Relations? It's a group, a think tank of people who have a lot of power, control much of what happens in this country. But I won't go into this very much, although there were some fake maps saying that Hitler planned to invade North and South America also, and that was used to get people to want to go fight the Nazis even more. But that led to what's called Operation Paperclip. Anybody ever heard of that? No? All right, well, at the end of World War II, Nazi scientists and intelligence agents were brought to the USA to help develop our technology and secret CIA agencies. All right? Scientists, members of the SS and the Gestapo were brought over. Meet the Nazis that were employed by the U.S. government because they were too important to be in the Nuremberg trials. Okay, it's a documented thing. In fact, it was even announced in the newspapers at the time that German scientists were recruited by the U.S. Werner von Braun is a famous one. But there were many others, and they say scientists, but there were a lot of other people as well. The Office of Policy Coordination. Okay. The history of the Office of Policy Coordination, OPC, begins with its establishment on 1st of September 1948, ends in 1952, when it was merged with the Office of Special Operations into a combined directorate, which became known as the Clandestine Services of the Central Intelligence Agency, CIA. So they used these Nazi propaganda people to come over and help start the CIA. And there's a lot more that we could go into there, but some of the people were Alan Dulles, Cord Meyer, Richard Helms, Frank Wiesner, Philip Graham, to name a couple others I won't say just yet. But Nazi SS and Gestapo agents were absorbed into the CIA to improve tactics and propaganda practices. They were so good at it in Germany, after all. Did you know that following World War II, the CIA got most of their funding by selling heroin into Harlem and the jazz clubs there? Believe it or not, they were literally destroying Harlem and addicting many famous jazz musicians just to fund their secret black projects. That's where they got their initial funding. They've been controlled by the deep state from the very start. And I've learned so much about this in the past 5 years, I just felt time to share a little of it. They've manipulated our democracy through the mainstream media, our republic, really. In the beginning, Mockingbird was created and led by Frank Wiesner, Alan Dulles, some of the people I just mentioned. Their main focus was to interact behind the scenes with major media outlets and get reporters on the CIA payroll. The agency had them all in their pockets: ABC, CBS, NBC, Time, Life, Newsweek, Associated Press, UPI, Reuters. You can go on and on. It said that CIA had over 1,000 journalists working with secret assignments, creating propaganda articles for use at home and abroad. But the question becomes, did Operation Mockingbird mean that there were no real investigative journalism or ditto journalists in the U.S.? Are we to understand that the mainstream media was similar to the Soviet-style journalism represented by the newspaper Pravda? Well, not completely. This is about fake news in the 1960s, and Operation Mockingbird was confirmed at this time. On November 30th, 1973, the Washington Star News reported that the CIA employed some 40 journalists who doubled as undercover agencies. One of the journalists named in these reports is covering the assassination probe for one of our most widely read newspapers. Okay, and that was a big deal. As I mentioned before, the JFK files were recently released. We haven't heard a whole lot about them, but a lot of top secret information has been coming out about the assassination of JFK. When it comes to certain political and historical issues from the so-called Operation Mockingbird, when it kicks in, well, one of those times when that kicks in is, when it did kick in was the Kennedy assassination. All right. They said that we believe that in order to fool the public, a vast portion of reported news must be true. So you can only hide what is false if you have a large truth to hide it in. Kind of the way the evolutionism thing works too. Here are our perceptions of the many faces and possibilities of how Mockingbird could have been applied. Reporters on the CIA payroll force witnesses to change their story. Special assets within the media who affect others to act and report incorrect conclusions, opinions, and perceptions. CIA directing assets within the media. Editors who can review texts and change facts to suit. And on and on. They just list a whole bunch of things that they intended to do, and most of which they did do. And then there was a great man who was trying to do some of the same things that I think Donald Trump is trying to do now. He didn't have some of the same protections, though, and we know what happened to him. All right. It was confirmed in the JFK files just released last year. We learned that they lied to us for 50 years, saying that Operation Mockingbird was just a conspiracy theory. All right? You know the man who was in charge of the CIA at the time JFK was president was Allen Dulles. JFK fired him because he felt he couldn't trust him. And then later he was put in charge of the Warren Commission's report on the assassination of Kennedy to lead that. All right. Did you know that the CIA made up the term conspiracy theory in 1967 to keep people from finding out the truth of the Kennedy assassination and Operation Mockingbird? We hear that all the time now. Conspiracy theory, conspiracy theory, conspiracy theory. Anything that somebody thinks might not be true about what they hear, the official narrative is they're conspiracy theorists. All right, that came from the CIA. They wanted you to believe the Warren Commission report that was, as I said, led by Allen Dulles. Operation Mockingbird is one of the many covert CIA operations perpetrated on the people of the Republic of the United States. Okay. Now, the term conspiracy theory, as I said, was invented by the CIA in order to prevent disbelief of official government stories. Down there, it says the term conspiracy theory was developed by the CIA as a means of undercutting the critics of the Warren Commission's report that President Kennedy was killed by Oswald. The use of this term was heavily promoted in the media by the CIA. Anybody who doubted that was a conspiracy theorist and started getting looked at by the CIA and even the FBI. One person I follow said, you know why there are so many conspiracy theorists? Because there are so many conspiracies. All right. Fake news creates this label, we just talked about that is used to attack anyone who challenges the official narrative of what's going on. Fake news continued into the 70s, as Carl Bernstein on CBS even talked about, saying here CBS was unquestionably used by the CIA, their most valuable broadcasting asset. There's more information there. Continued on into the 1980s. Here's a quote we heard before by CIA Director William Casey, who was pretty well known at that time. Said we'll know our disinformation program is complete when everything the American public believes is false. Came right out and said that. There's fake news in the 1990s when the first Gulf War started and people didn't like that. Phil Donahue, who I used to know, I worked at TV station Chicago, WGN with him when he had his Donahue show there. He lost his show because he disagreed with the Gulf War, and he said so. Jesse Ventura also lost his platform. He ended up running and becoming governor of Minnesota when I was living there. Fake news pretty much started the second Gulf War too. I hate to say it, but there's a lot of deception involved there. Weapons of mass destruction things, false facts on who the perpetrators were and the terrorism involved. I can talk about that again sometime, but I think a lot of information is going to be coming out over the next several months and few years, I think. And one of the reasons I'm saying all this now is because I really believe that. We're going to be starting to hear about a lot of bad things that have happened, and it's going to shock a lot of people. So I just want to say, don't be too shocked, please, because there are good things going on too. In fact, I think the world's going to change a lot for the better over the next few years. I'm going to talk about some of that next week. But the deep state's been spying on us for a long time. That's what the Patriot Act was largely about in the early 2000s. And Joe Biden wrote most of that. At least he says he did. He's proud of it. But it was not a good thing. There's Edward Snowden, if you remember him. He came out and started talking about that. They started trying to kill him, chased him all over the world. I think he's still in Russia. Having asylum. Well, this is a big, huge thing we could go into, but basically it says the American Empire and its media. But right at the top in the middle, there is the Council on Foreign Relations. They really have the most power of any group or organization. In fact, I read a book, and I'm Mordecai Zember. He's an investigative journalist and historian. He had this to say about the Council on Foreign Relations, and I like his name, by the way, Mordecai. He says, what exactly is the Council on Foreign Relations, the CFR? Many Americans know almost nothing about this organization, yet this organization has dominated this country's politics, the press, and the economy for decades. Representative John Rarick once said, the CFR, dedicated to one world government, financed by a number of the largest tax-exempt foundations, and wielding such power and influence over our lives in the areas of finance, business, labor, military, education, and mass communication media, should be familiar to every American concerned with good government and with preserving and defending the U.S. Constitution and our free enterprise system. Yet, the nation's right-to-know machinery, the news media, usually so aggressive in exposures to inform our people, remain conspicuously silent when it comes to the CFR, its members, and their activities. The Council on Foreign Relations is the establishment, the deep state. Not only does it have influence and power in key decision-making positions at the highest levels of government to apply pressure from above, but it also finances and uses individuals and groups to bring pressure from below to justify the high-level decisions for converting the United States from a sovereign constitutional republic into a servile member of a one-world dictatorship. Says that's their agenda. Here's two people who are members: Brian Williams, Katie Couric. Do you recognize some of these names? Barbara Walters, Dan Rather, Tom Brokaw, Jim Lehrer, Leslie Stahl,